Hey, what is up you guys? In this series of videos, I'm going to show you how we can use Maxwell's new Denoiser to address some of the noise in the tricky materials like subsurface scattering, frosted glass, and some others. And obviously we're going to start with the subsurface scattering as the material that is famous for having noise, because it's basically based on the noise, like scattering. Anyway, so we're going to be building this little scene. It's right here. You see this little monster, right? This is how it's going to look like when we render it, because I already did that. And it took me 10 minutes, and I reached sampling level of almost 8, right? Nothing too crazy. But before we jump into the denoiser, which is right here, right there, I want to show you quickly how this scene is set up so you would understand how the material and lights work together here, okay? Here we're back in Maxwell Studio, and let's check this out. The scene is actually super simple. I'm going to switch to my perspective camera. As you can see, it's just a plane at 1 meter by 1 meter, nothing too fancy. It's our Godzilla, which is very small. It's basically just 11 centimeters tall. We have a camera. We have image-based lighting for our environment, and also it serves as our fill light. We have a, let me just switch to this one. We have a key light right here, this big panel key light. It brings all the reflections on this side, if you can see, so the light panel is like somewhere here, right? So all this, our key lighting comes from this panel right here. Now we also have this detail light. There's a little details, which is basically picks up on some of the little things here and there. It's not really important to have this light, I just like to have it. And the other primary light source is this rim light, or the background light, or whatever you want to call it. It's what creates this reflection on the floor. You see this bright side, and also this little details right here. Also, this highlights the spikes right here, because it's all coming from this area from behind the table. Right, also creates a little nice ambience coming from the, I don't know, maybe a window or something, right? Okay, so that's our scene. Now in terms of materials, the table material doesn't even make sense to even discuss. It's very simple, just base color. I don't know if you can see that. Switch it on, you can see there's a bunch of, like, there's some stones, some different colored planes, there's a wood, there's even grid with the numbers to test it out. It's just my lazy type of material that I'm using for the floor, nothing too fancy. Right, here I have just one single BSDF with basically just a roughness texture right here. Some surface variation, nothing too complicated. Now for translucent material, that is on our Godzilla, is material that I made using Maxwell's Material Assistant. So I picked up the translucent. It comes with this kind of shade of green, almost like that. And I've converted it to layered material and adjusted a few parameters. One of those was the roughness, because I wanted the subject to be pretty rough, not so shiny. I mean, still, you can still see it's processed. It's a little bit like not polished, but it's quite smooth, but not very shiny. I didn't want it to be like a shiny one, right? So I increased the roughness there. I also tweaked the attenuation distance, which is important in our case because the object is pretty small, and we just want to make sure that the attenuation distance is good enough to see that it's translucent, but not too much. So in my case, I found that 15 mm works fine, like 1.5 centimeter attenuation distance, a distance when the light starts to use this color, right, to reach its full color potential right here. Okay, now in order to activate the denoiser, what you need to do is you gotta go to your, before, let me show you my environment. See, it's an image-based environment. It's HDR, free HDR, you can download it with a link in the description. And all other sections for reflection, refraction, illumination, they use the same as the background. So right? And my camera system, also pretty simple. See, it's target distance 0.37 meters away, so like practically 37 centimeters away from the object. And you can see it's, so I put that the focus distance is somewhere in the middle, so it's gonna be plus minus. So I just wanted to add a little bit of, you know, this depth feeling, because, you know, the resolution is very not so big, it's just like a 2K resolution square. Now I use 50mm camera for this shot because I wanted to feel a little bit more natural than if I would use something that is more suitable for product viz or object visualization photography. It would be like 100mm or 120mm optics. But I wanted to have it a little bit more of a homemade feel, like if you would take a photo on your phone or whatever, something that is like you made it a homemade, so it's not too professional, but not too distorted, like 35 or 24 millimeters lenses, right? Everything else you see, it's a pretty standard settings for the indoor lighting, which is quite low shutter speed. So obviously going to use a tripod or something. Now, in order to activate the denoiser, you would need to do it before you start rendering, obviously. You go to render settings, and at your denoiser tab, you just click enable. So that's how you activate the denoiser. Now there's a few parameters here that you can tweak, but the most important one that you need to decide before you start rendering is actually when to apply the denoiser. So if you say select each sampling level, it tells you from which sampling level you want to start denoising. What's going to happen is your render will reach sampling level of 8, and then it will pause the render, denoise it, which is going to take, I don't know, 30, maybe 25, 30 seconds, depends on your machine. And then once it's done, it's going to continue. So, and every sampling level, you're going to pause it, denoise, and then continue rendering. If you want to save some time, like, I don't know, a few minutes or whatever, just go to at the end, and it will not pause your render until it's finished. It basically starts denoising only at the end once you're done rendering. Now, why would you pick at each sampling level? For example, if you're not really sure when you're going to stop your render, you can say, okay, my minimal sampling level is going to be 8, right? So I'm going to render till sampling 8. After sampling level 8, I want to see how the denoised image looks like, and to evaluate whether I need to give it another sampling level to render, a little bit of time to render, or I'm cool with that. I'm going to stop it and use the denoiser image, or maybe the full render, whatever, right? So this is parameters when you're not really sure how long you're going to make your render go for. But in my case, I put at the end because I deliberately set up that I want to render, only for 10 minutes, or sampling level not greater than 10. Even if it could go higher than 10, I don't want it. I want to show you how we can use something on the fairly noisy image, which is like sampling level 10, you know, it's quite low. Now, I use GPU. That's not for the render, that's for the denoiser. And GPU here, it doesn't mean it will only use the NVIDIA's GPU. It could use any sort of GPU, because that's for denoiser, not for the rendering. It's going to use this GPU only when it starts denoising. And it could use AMD GPU, Intel GPU, NVIDIA, any sort of GPU. There's a high chance that your computer has a GPU, because that's like normal these days. And you probably want to click that because it's going to do denoising process faster. Okay. The other thing, if you're rendering a very high resolution image and your computer is not very, very powerful, then you want to click this styling. Now, the last thing that we want to consider before hitting the render is the method of denoising. There's two types of denoising that you can go for. It's basically the main type plus the extra, right? So fast, I'll go for the fast denoiser because I like it that way. Now, if you're rendering really tricky scene or you need a very precise denoising result, then you would probably should go for accurate. what it'll do, it'll activate the denoise shadows, like extra pass, so it'll take a little bit extra time for the rendering, but your denoising results are going to be more accurate. The rest of the settings could be tweaked after or during the rendering, because it's Maxwell, right? So that is that. So hit render, and let's do our stuff. Okay, now when the render is done, and it reached sampling level almost 8, as you can see, there's a new buttons were introduced right here. With a refresh, render, and refresh denoiser. So you pick which one you want to refresh, only denoiser, or denoising render, or only render, right? In our case, we're gonna refresh denoiser because the render, I'm pretty fine with it. So straight away, let's go to the denoiser result, right? And that's how it looks like straight out of the box. Now, overall, it looks okay. If you do like this, right, looks fine. Although I do feel that we're losing quite a little bit of sharpness right here in this area, where it starts to go out of focus, but not out of focus yet, but it starts to. We're losing a little bit of here, like see this one. I mean, if I go back to our original ones, you have how many details we have here, right? Okay. So to address that, we have a few parameters actually. Right here. So the first two parameters, color influence 1 and color influence 2, those are responsible for high frequency color details and the mid-range frequency color details. Well, it would be a little bit tricky to see it in this particular example, but we'll get to that when we start to see how Denoiser works with the textured materials. When we have high frequency texture on our materials, maybe like the floor here, right? But we can still benefit from it. Okay, so like every value here, the lower it is, the less denoiser you'll get. Because this is unbiased result, and this is your biased result. Basically, they use approximation to compute this particular image. Okay, so basically if you put them all to 0, you'll just get this same noise, as you can see right here, right? You can see quite a lot of noise. Okay, so the first two parameters, they're also very subtle. It would be pretty hard to see the results there. But let's see. I would just put them in half, like say 0.2 and 0.2 all together. And let's do a screen grab of this one, right? So we could compare afterwards. Next limit, guys, if you're listening to me, please do a screen grab function here, right, in this viewport, so we could do a screen grabs and compare those, especially when we're dealing with the denoiser. Super useful. And I mean, it's just JPEGs or PNG. We don't need to keep them even in the MXA file. Okay, so just a temp. And let's do a refresh. So now what it's going to do is going to compute our denoising. In my case, it doesn't show any status bar. I believe they should be saying like denoising happening right now, hold on to your seats. And they would like do like that. Yeah. I can see my benchmark was pretty low, 317, right? I'm on the Mac, by the way, on iMac. So I would expect it to be super fast. So that's the denoiser we got. And let's do a screen grab. As you guys can see, this is our original denoiser result. See this 0.4, 0.45, right? And this is 0.2. I don't know about you guys. I don't see much of a difference. I'm just switching those. But that was expected because it just we don't really have much of the color variation, just a plain solid color. The only color variation comes from the subsurface scattering. But anyways, it feels like that it's going to be a little bit sharper maybe, so let's just keep it that way. Anyway, so here we are in back in our denoiser. Now I'm not going to tell you how the denoiser works because there's actually quite convenient video about that on Next Limits YouTube channel. And super helpful and very straightforward documentation that describes how exactly each parameter works here, what are those channels are for, in simple ways. Denoiser exports your, check this out, NFT right here, different channels, right? Now, the other parameters, which you probably would see more, most of the influence happening, is the features influence. Now, obviously, it basically, you want to have this balance between how sharp you want your features to be in your image versus how much noise it's going to have, right? So right away, if we're going to go, say, if you're not sure how this parameter works, I usually go like in half, right? So you just go in half, 0.3, and see. If that's too much, then just go in half between this and what it was before. If it's too little, then go in half between 0 and this parameter. Easy, so that way you can pinpoint where to go. Okay, and let's do a refresh. Okay, so that's our previous result, and that's our 0.3. Now you can see it here, how this actually becomes much sharper. Now, without jumping too much, but it does become sharper. Let's check this out, area right here, 0.62. And here also, see how blurry is this? And that this is just, it just brings some of the details back. Now, I do feel that we can go a little bit even more sharper, generally because I just don't mind having a little bit of noise. But here is quite sharp and still have no noise. So let's go back to our render and go even lower. So again, half between 0 and 300, right? And let's hit a refresh on Denoiser. Okay, now this is our 0.3, right? And let's see how the 0.150 looks like. Now you can see it becomes sharper, but it also starts to bring, well, in this shot it's kind of hard to say whether it's details or actual noise. But it does bring some nice details in this really blurry areas right here, right? I generally think that this is a very good result that I'm happy with. I don't mind having a little bit of noise here and there. It actually makes it more natural. They have a little bit of grain, right? But it definitely feels much sharper. I mean, in comparison to the original one, this, you'll check this out, looks so much sharper. And you can see we went from our render to the denoiser in not so much of the compromise in, the details. Still have them. It's still there, right? Now, to bring back some of these ones, let's go back to this guys. Okay. And to do the final pass, let's reduce final pass in, say, half. Right? Whatever, roughly. And let's hit refresh button. Now, while it does the refresh, let's talk about the filter radius and Firefly Remover. Now, Firefly Remover does what it says it does. It removes the fireflies. In some of the, sometimes when you render it removes those raw pixels that are just pure white, what we call fireflies. So it tries to identify whether your image have those and removes them. In my case, as you can see, I don't really have them here. So I don't need that, right? So I'm not going to use that. Okay, now Denoiser is done. Let's do another screen grab. Okay, so here I am in our comparison app. As you can see, the final pass here is still 0.45, and then we go to 0.225. I don't know about you guys, but I don't really see much of a difference. It does add a little bit of maybe a little bit of sharpness, a little bit more definition. So this pixels, that there's a blurry noise, becomes a little bit less blurry. I don't know if you see. This is like width pass, reduced pass, increased pass, like 0.4, right? So this is how you can see it. I'm actually okay to maybe increase it a little bit. Maybe 0.3 would be fine. Okay, so let's go back to our render and let's go back to 0.3. Filter radius. The way I would use this is that if you have more or less smooth materials, in my case it's not very smooth because I have quite a lot of geometry details, but if you have, like, say, a backdrop which is very smooth but it just comes out noisy, or just some, I don't know, smooth surface that is just naturally smooth but it comes with noise, you want to increase that, or maybe leave it at 10. If it's not enough, just increase that so you can have this feature influence, but higher filter radius, so it'll be like more smooth, less patchy. In my case, I would reduce that a little bit because I still feel that we can get a little bit sharper results by reducing these patches of the smooth patches to create a little bit more sharper details. Let's see if we can reduce it really carefully. So I go about 8, and let's hit the refresh for the last time. Okay, so this is our image with the filter radius 10, and this is with the filter radius 8. Can't say it looks sharper. I'll leave it for now like that. Okay, and this is how we went through from the original one. Let's do a screen grab of the original and compare our final result with the original. Okay, so this is our denoiser result. And this is our original render. You can see we go from pretty noisy to quite not so noisy, right? So this is, it's kind of hard to say. I'm actually quite happy with the denoise result because the table for me was never a priority because I know the material in the table is quite lame, you know. So I focus only on this one, and this one doesn't have any textures. It's pretty crazy, right? And it looks okay to me. I mean, it looks, even denoised version looks okay to me. Again, denoising. So this is how you can use new denoiser. Works pretty well. Now in the next video, we're going to see how we can work with the frosted glass and the denoiser together to get rid of some of the noise, which are very common for the frosted glass, because again, frosted glass, right? And I'll see you there. Cheers.